My marriage hit a wall a few months back. You know, I've been in Atlanta visiting my brother. I chose to go to Atlanta because, of course, Martell and I have children together, so it's important. While I do need time and space away, it is still also important for me to be, you know, in an area or a distance that's not too far so that there's not an issue when it comes to exchanging the kids and custody and things of that nature.
There are moments in life when the mask finally slips, when the truth can no longer be hidden behind charm, excuses, or carefully crafted appearances. For Martell Holt, that moment arrived inside a Madison County courtroom, where the air was heavy with tension, where every eye was fixed on him, and where his fate was sealed in black and white. What once seemed like a picture-perfect family dream had long since crumbled, but this ruling, this final blow, was different. The court didn't just expose his mistakes.
Get out!
But there's still certain things we need to talk about.
No, go and keep going.
You talking like that.
Yeah, no.
I don't want my kids to be around that.
Get out.
And every time Martell Holt does something, Melody, she runs social media and put my out there, but I haven't done that.
It took away the one thing he valued most, the connection that gave his image meaning, his children. And in that instant, Melody Shari, the woman he had tried to silence, control, and break, walked away with something far more powerful than just a legal victory. She walked away with her peace, her voice, and the weight of justice finally on her side. But here's what makes this story so gripping. This wasn't some overnight downfall or random twist of fate. This was years in the making, a slow unraveling of a man who thought he could play by his own rules and a woman who refused to let betrayal define her. To understand how it all ended up here, we have to go back to the very beginning, back to when Martell and Melody were more than just reality TV stars. They were the golden couple of Huntsville. Or so it seemed.
Considering all the things that have gone on both sides of the fence, Melody and myself, I really don't see Melody and I ever getting back together. And I just see who Melody really is, because I feel that her heart, for real, her heart isn't good.
Martell Holt was never just another face on television. From the start, he carried himself like a man destined for success. With his sharp suits, polished smile, and undeniable charisma, he gave off the aura of someone who had life figured out. He and Melody weren't just husband and wife, they were business partners, building empires in real estate, raising 4 children, and presenting themselves as the blueprint for Black excellence. Their love story seemed like something out of a magazine, 2 ambitious dreamers lifting each other higher, turning bricks and mortar into homes, and homes into wealth. And when the cameras of Love and Marriage Huntsville started rolling, viewers were drawn in. They saw Martell as the strong provider, the confident husband who always knew what to say.
All right, well, Love and Marriage Huntsville TV star Martell Holt was recently arrested for domestic violence. The 42-year-old was booked into the Madison County Jail last night. Holt was charged with third-degree domestic violence and harassing communications.
They saw Melody as the radiant wife, balancing motherhood with entrepreneurship, never missing a beat. Together, they were unstoppable, or at least, that was the image. But if reality television has taught us anything, it's that the truth always finds a way to the surface. Behind closed doors, cracks were already forming. Melody was carrying burdens the audience couldn't see. Martell was making choices that would soon come back to haunt him. What nobody expected was just how messy, how devastating, and how public their unraveling would become. The affair was the breaking point. When Melody revealed Martell's long-term infidelity, the image shattered. This wasn't a fling. This wasn't a mistake. It was a betrayal that cut to the bone. And worse, Martell didn't seem remorseful. He didn't step back and take accountability. Instead, he leaned into the chaos, painting himself as misunderstood, as if the problem wasn't his actions but the way people perceived them. Fans were divided. Some still defended him, convinced he was just a man who slipped. Others turned on him completely, labeling him the villain of his own story. But through it all, Melody's voice grew stronger. She refused to stay silent. She channeled her pain into purpose, into music, into business, into independence.
Are y'all still going through this, man? What do you think the problem is?
I don't...
Martell.
She don't want nobody seeing that she's actually working with me in terms of effective co-parenting. She don't want nobody to see that. She don't want nobody to see that she's been nice or cool with me. It gotta be. What else could it be? One thing about I'm trying to stay peaceful. No, because I don't mess up your peace. I don't say anything wrong. I don't do anything wrong. It's all about the kids. She can call my phone and talk to the kids whenever, and I don't have a number to call my kids when they're with her. I just want her to do right.
Each step she took away from Martell made her shine brighter, and each outburst from him made his star dimmer. Still, the true battle wasn't fought on television screens. It was fought in courtrooms. And courtrooms don't care about charm. They don't care about followers, cameras, or spin. They care about facts. They care about patterns. They care about what's on paper. And the paper trail that Martell left behind was damning. The court records revealed a different Martell than the man fans once admired. This wasn't just about infidelity or failed marriage vows. This was about harassment, control, and a refusal to respect boundaries. Twice, he pled guilty to charges tied to harassment and domestic violence. Twice, he stood before judges and admitted, in his own way, that the public image was a lie. Each guilty plea carried consequences, but perhaps none more serious than the timing. Because as he faced these convictions, another battle loomed: the custody of his 4 children. Melody had been quietly preparing, gathering evidence, documenting patterns, waiting for the right moment. And when that moment came, she stepped into court not just as a scorned ex-wife, but as a mother determined to protect her children. The judge didn't just see a man who cheated. They saw a man with a history of harassment. They saw financial irresponsibility, missed payments, failed commitments. They saw social media meltdowns, reality TV explosions, and a pattern of behavior that screamed instability. In contrast, they saw Melody, steady, focused, raising her children while building her businesses, despite the chaos swirling around her. So when the gavel finally came down, the message was clear. Melody won. Martell lost. And this wasn't just a technical loss. It was a life-changing defeat. The court ruled in Melody's favor, granting her primary custody, restricting Martell's access, and sending a signal that his time of controlling the narrative was over. For Martell, it was devastating. The man who once walked into every room with confidence now sat in silence as the judge outlined his restrictions. A suspended jail sentence. Probation. Fines. A no-contact order with Melody. And the looming reality that his time with his children would no longer be his to control, but dictated by court orders and conditions. For Melody, it was vindication. Years of struggle, humiliation, and emotional pain had finally been acknowledged. The system, often criticized for failing women, had listened to her story. She walked out of that courtroom not just as Martell's ex-wife, but as a mother whose fight had been worth it. The emotional impact of this ruling can't be overstated. For Martell, it stripped him of more than just time with his children. It stripped him of his image. The businessman, the reality star, the picture-perfect father gone. Replaced by a man with convictions, court orders, and a reputation in free fall. Every headline, every legal document, every guilty plea became another crack in the facade he once worked so hard to maintain. And for Melody, the victory was bittersweet. Yes, she won custody. Yes, she gained freedom. But the scars remain. Years of betrayal, public humiliation, and constant battles take a toll. Still, what makes Melody's story powerful is her refusal to let those scars define her. She turned pain into power. She turned heartbreak into independence. She showed her children that strength isn't about pretending everything is fine, it's about fighting through the storm and finding peace on the other side. This ruling also sent shockwaves beyond their personal lives. Fans of the show, once entertained by their drama, now saw the very real consequences of toxic relationships. It wasn't just TV. It wasn't just gossip. It was real life, with children caught in the middle, with futures at stake. And it forced people to reflect on love, on choices, on the importance of breaking cycles before they destroy everything. In the end, Martell Holt's story is a cautionary tale. It's about what happens when pride takes the place of accountability, when control becomes more important than love, and when someone refuses to change until it's too late. The man who once built houses couldn't build peace in his own home. The man who once dreamed of empires lost the most important kingdom of all his family. And Melody Shari? She is no longer defined by his betrayal. She is no longer just Martell's ex. She is her own force. A mother, an entrepreneur, a survivor. The court ruling wasn't just a legal win. It was a symbol that she had reclaimed her story, her dignity, and her future. As for Martell, his path forward is uncertain. He can try to rebuild. He can try to grow. But the clock is ticking, and the eyes of the world are watching. Because in the end, this was never just about ratings, drama, or reality TV. This was about children. About safety. About healing. And about a man learning, too late, that when you lose the trust of the people who matter most, no court, no camera, and no excuse can save you. The gavel has spoken. Melody walks forward. Martell is left behind. And the story of their rise and fall will echo far beyond Huntsville, a reminder that the truth, no matter how long it takes, always comes out. When the courtroom emptied that day, Martell sat there for a moment longer than he should have. The world outside was still moving, reporters were waiting with microphones, cameras were clicking, and yet, for him, time stood still. He had built his life on appearances, on smiling for the cameras, on presenting himself as the man who had everything under control. But now, he wasn't in control of anything. His freedom, his finances, and even the precious time with his children were no longer his to decide. The gavel had spoken, and for the first time in a long time, he couldn't charm his way out of it. As he finally stood and walked toward the doors, the whispers filled the air. People weren't just talking about the sentence. They were talking about the fall of a man who once seemed untouchable. His walk, once full of swagger, now carried the weight of shame. His head didn't tilt high anymore. His eyes didn't search for the cameras. They searched for something else, maybe a sign of hope, maybe a way to rewrite the story, maybe just a familiar face that still believed in him. But what he found instead was silence. Melody, on the other hand, walked out of the same courthouse with her head held high, but not out of arrogance. It was relief. It was the quiet strength of a woman who had fought battles most people couldn't even imagine, and finally saw the scales of justice tilt in her favor. She didn't smile for the cameras. She didn't gloat. She simply walked forward, as if her focus wasn't on the past or even the headlines, but on the 4 young lives waiting for her at home. The children were always the heart of this fight. They didn't ask for the drama. They didn't choose the cameras, the courtrooms, or the chaos. And yet, they lived it every day. The arguments, the accusations, the instability, all of it was their reality. Now, with the ruling in place, Melody could finally promise them something she hadn't been able to before: stability. It wouldn't be perfect. The scars were still there. But for the first time in years, the possibility of peace felt real. Martell's sentence might not have sent him behind bars immediately, but the restrictions were clear. Probation, mandatory counseling, fines, and a no-contact order with Melody. Most importantly, supervised visits with his children unless he proved over time that he could be trusted again. On paper, it may have seemed like a light punishment, but in reality, it was heavy. It wasn't just the law keeping him in check, it was his own history. Every misstep would be documented. Every mistake would add another wall between him and the people he loved. And this is where the true tragedy of Martell's story comes into focus. He had years to change. He had opportunities to make things right. He had a family that once believed in him and a woman who stood by him long after most would have walked away. But instead of learning, he doubled down. Instead of accountability, he chose denial. And now, the cost was more than financial, it was personal. But here's the twist nobody expected. While Martell wrestled with his fall, Melody wasn't focused on revenge. She wasn't celebrating his downfall. She was busy building. She poured her energy into her children, into her businesses, into her music, into a future that no longer had to answer to his mistakes. She transformed the courtroom victories into life victories, proving to herself and to everyone watching that survival is not just about making it through the storm, it's about learning how to dance in the rain. The public, too, began to see the story differently. For years, reality TV had blurred the line between entertainment and truth. Martell's outbursts, his attempts to spin the narrative, his refusal to let go, all of it had been dismissed by some as just for the show. But when the documents came out, when the judge made it official, it could no longer be brushed aside. The man who once looked like the star of the show was now revealed as the cautionary tale. And Melody, once painted as the long-suffering wife, emerged as the example of resilience. And what about the children? They will grow up with memories of tension, yes, but also with the knowledge that their mother fought for them. They will see that she didn't just talk about strength, she lived it. And perhaps, one day, they will see their father not as the man who lost everything, but as someone who learned too late the importance of humility, honesty, and growth. The door isn't completely shut for Martell. He still has time to become a better man, but the clock is ticking, and now the burden is on him to prove it, not to the cameras, not to the fans, but to his children. In the end, this story is bigger than Martell and Melody. It's about how quickly a dream can turn into a nightmare when pride gets in the way. It's about how reality TV may amplify the drama, but it can't hide the truth forever. Most of all, it's about the power of choosing peace over chaos, dignity over control, and healing over revenge. For Martell Holt, the sentencing was more than a legal ruling, it was a mirror. A reflection of every decision he had made, every moment he chose pride over love, control over respect. For Melody Shari, it was more than a win, it was freedom. A chance to close one chapter and start another, not as someone's wife, not as someone's victim, but as her own woman. So when we look back on this saga, what will we remember? The cheating scandals? The reality show drama? The court battles? Or will we remember the strength of a woman who refused to be broken and the cautionary tale of a man who thought he could outrun accountability? The answer lies not in the headlines, but in the lessons. Martell's downfall reminds us that unchecked pride destroys everything it touches. Melody's triumph reminds us that even in the darkest moments, resilience can light the way. And their children, the real heart of this story, remind us why the fight was worth it in the first place. The cameras will keep rolling. The show will go on. But the story of Martell and Melody has already left its mark, far beyond reality TV. It's a story about betrayal and redemption, about loss and healing, about the cost of choices and the strength of survival. And maybe, just maybe, the most powerful lesson is this: when the dust settles, when the gavel falls, when the cameras fade, the truth will always remain. The courtroom doors may have closed, but the echoes of that ruling are still being felt today. For Martell, the weight of his choices will linger for years to come. He once stood tall as a husband, a father, and a businessman, but now, his story is etched into public record, a man brought down not by bad luck, but by his own refusal to change. Every headline that followed was not just a report on his life, but a reminder that actions, no matter how well hidden, eventually come to light. And that's the painful truth Martell has to live with. He could have chosen accountability. He could have chosen to rebuild trust, to heal his family, to become the man his children needed him to be. But instead, he fought to maintain control until there was nothing left to hold on to. Now, the very things he once took for granted, his reputation, his freedom, his access to his children, are in the hands of a system that doesn't care about image or excuses. For Melody, this chapter tells a different story. She didn't win because she wanted revenge. She didn't fight because she needed to prove something to the world. She fought because her children deserved peace, and because she refused to let someone else's mistakes dictate the future of her household. The victory wasn't loud or boastful. It was quiet, steady, and deeply personal. And that makes it even more powerful. She left that courthouse not just with a legal ruling, but with the reassurance that her pain had not been in vain.